This week, Waste Watch is out shopping, and where better to go shopping? The local street market. You can see the produce, you can see whether it's any good before you buy. Now, supposing someone came along to you and said, give me £7,000 every year and I will go out and do your shopping for you. Would you trust them to do it? Well, you might. But supposing it was the government, would you trust them to do it? I don't think so. Britain's biggest shopper is the government. Every year it spends around £170 billion of our money, supposedly on our behalf. That's around £7,000 for every household in Britain. So what do they spend it all on? Well, they spend £45 billion a year on construction, both new build and maintenance. They spend about £10 billion a year on drugs, around £6 billion a year on arms, and getting on for £20 billion a year on IT systems and communications. And in every one of those areas, they make a complete hash of getting value for money. Let's look at some examples in the press recently. Let's start with the scandalous story this week of the Duff ammunition handed out to our paratroopers in Afghanistan. It seems that MOD have acquired a lot of cheap ammunition from somewhere that may have cost a fraction of the price of the regular ammunition, but doesn't work and is endangering the lives of our troops in the field. Of course, the MOD have got a long and dishonourable history of shocking purchasing decisions. From our troops in the desert having to buy their own boots because the standard kit wasn't up to the job, through to the poorly specified mega projects like the Nimrod surveillance aircraft, MOD routinely wastes billions of our money, yet fails to deliver the kit our forces actually need on the ground. Over and over again, we find the government buying stuff that is either not fit for purpose or perhaps is fit for purpose, but they've paid through the nose. And what about the 80 billion per annum NHS? Does that get good value for taxpayers in the stuff it purchases? An important question, because besides that 10 billion drugs bill I mentioned, the NHS is buying more and more services from the private sector. Well, the Department of Health clearly doesn't have much confidence in its ability because it's just appointed its first ever outside buying contractor to try and get a better deal. Unsurprising when you consider that one of its recent attempts at getting better value involved buying a batch of cheap surgical gloves. The problem was they were so cheap that staff found they had to wear 2 pairs of gloves instead of 1 because they split so easily. The CBI examined a group of hospital projects and found that dithering and indecision by NHS bureaucrats and politicians ended up pushing up the bill for taxpayers by over £100 million. Now what about street lights? That'd be quite a simple job, you'd think. I mean, you just put them up, couple them up to the electricity, and away you go. But we had a report a couple of weeks ago about York Council, which has just spent £10,700 on putting up some streetlights and forgot to arrange for the electricity to be coupled up to them. So they're completely useless. And up in Workington, taxpayers are having to pay £150,000 to put right a council blunder in the specification of a new multi-storey car park. They forgot to include the right security measures. A special inquiry at the council said, the slipshod management of the contract is deplorable and an unnecessary expense on taxpayers. There is no explanation given for this lack of common sense. Now, you'd think that holes in the road would be pretty straightforward, wouldn't you? I mean, how difficult can it be? But digging up the road routinely costs taxpayers hundreds of millions of pounds, and councils rarely seem to get it right. Just as a recent example, a road scheme in Hove in Sussex, slated to cost less than £700,000, actually ended up costing closer to £1 million, an overrun of around 50%. Our roads are often left in a shocking state, meaning that we taxpayers have to compensate motorists for damage to their vehicles. That alone costs us £70 million a year. We're ending Waste Watch this week on the railway bridge. And we've come here to talk about the upgrade of the West Coast Main Line. Now, this isn't actually the West Coast Main Line because our budget doesn't run to that. but the cost of that upgrade has just risen from 8.3 billion to 8.6 billion, all of it underwritten by taxpayers. And the National Audit Office has put that down once again to shockingly poor procurement processes. Now, in terms of government shopping disasters, we've really just scratched the surface, even in terms of the news this week. But I think we all understand the big picture. If you were going to get someone to do your shopping for you, you would not, in a million years, ask the government to do the job.